I stand across the room, champagne flute cold in my hand. The bubbles fizz, tiny explosions mirroring the ones going off in my chest, though no one here can see that. They see calm, collected Andrew Sterling, heir apparent, soon-to-be husband. What they don't see is the ghost standing beside me, the ghost of my past life, whispering warnings I already know by heart. Eliza laughs, the sound sharp and bright, bouncing off the crystal chandeliers. She lifts her hand, showing off the diamond bracelet, my bracelet, the one I gave her last week, a token of Usa. She's showing it to him. Daniel Thorne, her supposed cousin. The light catches the diamonds, scattering fractured rainbows across her skin, across his hungry eyes. Her perfume, jasmine, and something else, something cloying and expensive, drifts across the room, thick and suffocating. I remember this exact moment. The same party, the same people, the same goddamn bracelet glinting under the same lights. Last time I was the smiling fool, oblivious in the corner. This time is different. Some lessons, it seems, need to be taught twice. And this time, I'm the teacher. I move towards them. My steps are measured, unhurried. Practiced composure. A mask perfected over lifetimes, or at least one lifetime ago, and the months since I came back. Last time, at this very point in the engagement party, my world was tilting, confusion, a sickening disbelief churning in my gut as I watched them, too close, too familiar, blindsided. Tonight, my world is perfectly still, balanced on the knife edge of vengeance. Darling, Eliza turns, her smile faltering for just a fraction of a second before it locks back into place. Too bright, too wide. Have you met my cousin Daniel? He just flew in. Her laugh is a nervous flutter in the air between us. Daniel extends a hand, his grip firm, his eyes holding mine a beat too long, assessing, challenging. Daniel, I say, my voice smooth, betraying nothing of the storm inside. I take his hand, cool, dry, not the hand of a distant cousin. Eliza's told me so much about you. A lie, of course. She'd barely mentioned him. A footnote cousin conveniently arriving just now. Last time I'd welcomed him, offered him a drink, played the gracious host while my foundations crumbled. But this time I wasn't the fool they thought I was. Later, needing a moment, I step onto the terrace. The cool night air is a relief. I knew, of course. The moment I woke up 6 months ago, gasping in my old bed, the memories of my previous life crashing down. Eliza's betrayal, the public humiliation, the financial ruin orchestrated by those I trusted, ending with the sickening crunch of metal and blinding light. I knew Daniel Thorne was no cousin. Confirmation was easy. A glance, seemingly accidental, at Eliza's phone left unattended on the hall table just hours ago. Messages scrolling up the screen, pet names, clandestine meeting plans, critiques of me. He's so trusting, it's almost pathetic. Pathetic. The word echoes. The bitter taste of betrayal so familiar on my tongue rises again. It tastes like cheap whiskey and regret from the first time around. This time, it tastes like fuel. Eliza finds me leaning on the balustrade, staring out at the city lights. Everything okay, darling? She asks, looping her arm through mine, pressing close. That jasmine scent again. Nauseating. Perfect, I say, turning to face her, forcing a smile. Just thinking about the future. Our future. I let my gaze linger on her face, searching for any flicker of guilt. There's only practiced affection. It's going to be wonderful, isn't it? She sighs, leaning her head on my shoulder. Everything we've both been working towards, I agree. The ring box in my pocket suddenly feels heavy, a dead weight against my thigh. But my heart feels lighter. Revenge plans always did that to me. Eliza Hayes, my fiancée, again. Beautiful, undeniably. Sharp eyes, a smile that could charm millions, and ambition that burns like a cold fire. She wants it all. The name, the money, the status, the access that comes with being Mrs. Andrew Sterling. In my first life, I thought her ambition was something we shared, a drive to build a life together. I saw her focus as dedication. I was wrong. It was calculation. We met differently in each life, though the outcome was the same. The first time, a whirlwind romance after a chance meeting at a charity gala. I was captivated, swept away by her confidence and beauty. This time, knowing her game, I orchestrated the meeting. A calculated move at a gallery opening I knew she'd attend, scouting for her next step up the ladder. I played the part she expected. Wealthy, a little naive, easily charmed. And she took the bait, just like before. The difference? This time I saw the predatory gleam in her eyes from the start. I saw the way she assessed my suit, my watch, the casual mention of the family company. Her motivation hasn't changed. It's woven into her DNA. Her family has old connections but dwindling funds. Marrying me secures her family's position, elevates her status beyond just pretty debutante, and gives her the luxurious lifestyle she feels entitled to. Love was never part of her equation, only leverage. Her signature jasmine perfume, the one I once found intoxicating, now clings to my memories like a shroud, making me physically ill. It's the scent of deceit. What Eliza didn't know was that I remembered everything from before. Every whispered lie, every stolen moment, every calculated move. And this time her ambition would be her downfall. Marcus Thorne. Not Daniel's brother, despite the shared surname. A coincidence Eliza probably found amusing. Marcus, my best friend since we were kids, kicking a football in my family's sprawling backyard. 20 years of friendship. Shared secrets, shared beers, shared dreams. He was supposed to be my best man. In my first life, he was my best man, even as he was actively helping Eliza behind my back. A quiet word here. A facilitated meeting there, covering for her absences, all while clapping me on the back and telling me how lucky I was. The evidence this time? Easier to spot when you know where to look. An overheard snippet of conversation between him and Eliza at a restaurant last month. Voices low, urgent, mentioning Daniel's travel plans, then quickly changing the subject when I approached. A shared, panicked glance. Suspicious late-night meetings disguised as work emergencies. Last time, after my world imploded, Marcus smoothly stepped into the void. He used the chaos, leveraging connections I had introduced him to, cozying up to my former business partners, eventually taking over deals that should have been mine. He profited from my destruction. I confronted him subtly a few weeks ago. A casual question about his recent workload, mentioning I'd heard he was burning the midnight oil. His usual easy laughter grated on my nerves, sounding forced. His hand, reaching for his drink, trembled almost imperceptibly. Guilt. Or maybe fear. He recovered quickly, blaming stress, but I saw it. The same hand I'd shaken in friendship for 2 decades. The same hand that had patted my shoulder in false commiseration in my previous life. It would be the first I'd crush. My sister, Diana. Older by 5 years, always the pragmatic one. The one who landed on her feet. She knew. In both lives, she knew about Eliza and Daniel. Maybe not the intimate details, but she knew Eliza wasn't faithful, knew something wasn't right. And she stayed silent. Worse, she actively ran interference for Eliza, making excuses, subtly steering conversations away from dangerous territory. Her motivation? Money, plain and simple. Diana, despite our family's wealth, always wanted her own success, her own power. She'd invested heavily, perhaps foolishly, in Eliza's family's struggling textile business a couple of years ago, hoping for a turnaround, a chance to prove her business acumen. Eliza marrying me wasn't just a social coup for Eliza. It was a potential financial lifeline for Diana. A connection to the sterling fortune could float the Hayes Company, securing Diana's investment and ambitions. I see it in her nervous habit, the incessant clicking of the heavy gold bracelet she wears, a gift from our parents. Whenever the conversation veers towards Eliza, towards the wedding, towards anything that might expose the truth, that click, click, click starts, a tiny metallic tell. It's louder this time, or maybe I'm just listening for it. I remember a conversation from my past life, a week after the disastrous engagement party, finding Diana having drinks with Eliza, comforting her. When I confronted Diana then, demanding loyalty, she'd chosen Eliza's side, citing the business connection, the potential fallout. She chose money over blood. Blood might be thicker than water, but money, it seemed, was thicker than both. Richard Carmichael, my boss, CEO of the finance firm where I'd climbed the ranks, twice now. He'd always presented himself as a mentor, guiding my career, praising my successes. All bullshit. Richard has been covertly supporting Eliza's play, subtly undermining me while appearing supportive. Why? Resentment, old and festering. His daughter Chloe and I dated briefly in college. It ended amicably, I thought. Clearly, Richard didn't see it that way. He saw me as the boy who wasn't good enough. Then, later, the subordinate who rose too fast, perhaps eclipsing the future he envisioned for Chloe, or even himself. Eliza, with her beauty and connections, likely fed that resentment, whispering poison in his ear, forging an alliance. The promotion he recently offered me, Director of Strategic Development, the same one I received in my first life, isn't a reward. It's a setup. The projects under its umbrella are designed to fail, riddled with hidden problems only Richard knows about. Last time, I walked into it blind, eager, and grateful, and the subsequent failures were used as justification to sideline me, damaging my reputation just before Eliza made her move. This time I accepted with the same outward enthusiasm, but I know the game. His office always reeks of expensive cigar smoke, a thick, cloying scent that lingers long after he's gone, clinging to the plush carpets and mahogany desk. It's the smell of smug authority, of deals made in smoke-filled rooms. After our meeting about the promotion, the smell felt particularly acrid, like ash and deceit. He thinks he's moving his pieces into place. He doesn't realize I know the whole board. The company I helped build, the one he thinks he controls, would soon remember who really held the blueprints. And then there were the others, the wider circle. Friends, acquaintances, business contacts, people who populate the glittering events and exclusive clubs we move through. Many of them knew, or at least suspected. A whispered rumor here, an awkward silence there, eyes that slid away too quickly when I talked about the wedding. They saw Eliza and Daniel together at places they shouldn't have been. They heard the gossip, and they said nothing. Their concerns were, and are, entirely superficial. Status, appearances, not rocking the boat. Why risk alienating the potentially powerful future Mrs. Sterling, or the well-connected Hayes family, or the influential Marcus Thorne, or even Richard Carmichael? Siding with me, the potential victim, offered no advantage. In my previous life, after the engagement imploded and my fortunes nosedived, their silence turned into judgment, then abandonment. Doors closed, invitations dried up. They whispered behind their hands, judging my failure, my naivety. They abandoned me without a second thought, flocking to the perceived winners. I see them here tonight, sipping champagne, laughing their brittle laughs, casting curious glances my way. They have no idea. Let them laugh now. Let them whisper. Soon, they'd be begging for invitations to my new life, A life built on the ashes of the one they tacitly endorsed destroying. 2 weeks after the engagement party, I'm at the Oak Room, a dark wood and leather kind of place where deals are made and secrets are shared over expensive scotch. I'm supposed to be meeting a client, but I arrived early, on purpose, because I knew. My reborn knowledge isn't just about the big betrayals, it's the small details, the patterns, the schedules they thought were secret. And there they are, tucked into a shadowed booth in the far corner. Eliza and Marcus. Heads close together, voices low and intense. She's gesturing emphatically, a crease of worry between her perfect brows. He's nodding, looking grim, occasionally glancing around the room nervously. They think they're invisible, hidden. I signal the bartender, order my usual Macallan, neat. I take a sip, the fiery liquid warming a path down my throat, a stark contrast to the ice in my veins. I could walk over there, confront them, demand answers, watch them scramble and lie. That was the old Andrew's move. Impulsive, emotional, destructive, mostly to myself. The new Andrew watches, waits, plays the oblivious fiancé perfectly. I scan the room, make eye contact with an acquaintance across the bar, give a casual nod. Let them see me here, relaxed, unsuspecting. Inside, the tumblers of my plan click into place. The taste of the scotch is rich, complex, almost decadent as I plot their downfall from across the room. Sometimes the best revenge requires perfect timing, and I had all the time in the world. The next morning, the city is gray and damp outside my office window. Inside, the only sounds are the hum of the server rack and the quiet click of my keyboard. Revenge, I've learned, is often a dish best served digitally. Over the past few months, using the knowledge from my first life and the foresight of this one, I'd been quietly gathering threads. Marcus, in his ambition and eagerness to impress, had gotten sloppy. Especially after he started helping Eliza cover her tracks, likely dipping into funds that weren't his to manage unexpected expenses, like Daniel's surprise visits. In my first life, his financial juggling act eventually came to light, but only after I was gone, and he spun it to his advantage, framing himself as the one uncovering irregularities. This time, I control the narrative. I'd compiled the evidence, discreetly obtained transaction records, cleverly masked account transfers, emails hinting at off-the-books dealings. Nothing that traced back to me. Nothing that suggested anything other than an anonymous whistleblower concerned about corporate integrity. My fingers hover over the cold keyboard keys. A burner email account routed through layers of anonymity. The recipient, the head of compliance at Marcus's firm, a man known for his rigidity and ambition. Attach file, send, a single click. It feels liberating, orchestrated, manipulated, yes, but also undeniably a release. The first domino was set to fall. I wondered if Marcus would hear it coming. It took less than 48 hours. News travels fast in our circles, especially bad news. Marcus was suspended, pending investigation. Whispers turned into loud speculation. Embezzlement. Fraud. Millions potentially missing. His name, once associated with rising star status, was now mud. Eliza called me, her voice tight with panic. "Andrew, have you heard about Marcus? It's dreadful. They can't possibly think he did those things, can they? There must be some mistake." Her performance was almost convincing, the worried fiancé concerned for her fiancé's best friend. Almost. I heard the fear underneath, the terror that the investigation might somehow lead back to her, to Daniel, to their shared secrets. And then the call I'd been waiting for. Marcus himself. He wanted to meet, urgently. We met at a sterile coffee shop halfway between our offices. He looked like hell. Eyes bloodshot, suit rumpled, the usual confident swagger gone, replaced by a desperate, hunted look. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the air conditioning. "Andrew, man, you gotta help me," he began, his voice hoarse. "This is insane. It's a setup, a mistake. You know me. I couldn't." He leaned forward, dropping his voice. "There are people at the firm who want my job. They're framing me. You have connections, influence. You could make some calls, vouch for me?" He was begging. His desperation was music to my ears, the first note in a symphony I'd composed twice. I let him talk, listening patiently, my expression carefully neutral, maybe a little concerned. I sipped my coffee, let the silence hang after he finally ran out of steam. "Marcus," I said, my voice calm, reasonable. "This sounds incredibly serious, and of course I'm shocked. We've been friends for years." I paused, letting that sink in. "But you know how these things are. A formal investigation. It's out of my hands." He stared at me, confusion starting to cloud the desperation in his eyes. "Out of your hands? Andrew, we're talking about my life here. A phone call, that's all I'm asking." "And risk interfering with a corporate investigation?" I shook my head slowly, regretfully. "Company policy, Marcus. My hands are tied. Getting involved could compromise the investigation, maybe even make things look worse for you. And for me, frankly, appearances matter." I met his gaze directly. My heartbeat was slow, steady, a stark contrast to the frantic pulse I could almost see throbbing in his temple. "I can't get involved. I'm sorry." He kept staring, his eyes widening slightly. He pleaded again, his voice cracking, desperation turning into something else, suspicion. He was searching my face, looking for the friend he thought he knew and seeing something else, something cold, detached. He was finally realizing something was off, terribly off, about my reaction, my calm, but he couldn't fathom the truth. Not yet. "I have to go," I said, placing a few bills on the table for the coffees. "Let me know if there's anything appropriate I can do. Offer moral support, perhaps." I stood up, leaving him there amidst the lunchtime crowd, his world collapsing around him. 1 down, 3 to go, and none of them would see me coming. That evening, I stood on my apartment balcony. The city lights spread out below like scattered jewels. The night air felt cool against my skin, carrying the distant sounds of traffic. Marcus was neutralized, at least for now. The investigation would consume him, shred his reputation, and drain his resources. Eliza was rattled, her panic a tangible thing I could sense even when she wasn't around. The first victory felt clean, efficient. Unlike my first life, where my attempts at revenge were clumsy, emotional outbursts that backfired spectacularly. I'd moved too quickly then, driven by raw pain, tipping my hand, allowing them to unite against me more effectively. This time was different. Patience, precision, each move disguised, seemingly unrelated. Eliza suspected something was wrong. I could tell by the way she watched me sometimes, a flicker of unease in her eyes. But she couldn't connect the dots. How could she? The anonymous tip, my refusal to help Marcus. It all looked circumstantial, unfortunate timing. Marcus's downfall served another purpose. It isolated Eliza slightly, removing one of her key conspirators and support pillars. It also sent a subtle ripple of fear through the others who knew, even if they didn't understand the source. Good. Let them wonder. Let them worry. My gaze drifted towards the part of the city where my sister Diana lived. Diana always said family came first. Time to test that theory. Family dinner. A regular Sunday affair at my parents' house, usually a source of comfort, now a stage for my silent observations. Diana was there, impeccably dressed, laughing a little too loudly at our father's predictable jokes. Eliza sat beside me, playing the perfect daughter-in-law-to-be. Marcus's name hung unspoken in the air, a ghost at the table. Earlier that week, I'd confirmed what I already suspected. Following a hunch born from past life memories, I'd arranged to be coincidentally near a cafe I knew Diana frequented. And I saw them. Diana and Eliza, huddled together at a corner table, Diana passing Eliza a thick envelope. Not cash, likely documents. Their conversation, fragments of which drifted over, wasn't about comforting Eliza over Marcus's troubles. It was strategic, logistics, covering tracks, securing assets. Specifically, my assets. Diana wasn't just passively silent. She was actively helping Eliza strategize how to secure the maximum financial benefit from our upcoming marriage, likely planning ways to shield assets Eliza intended to gain access to, perhaps even discussing how to handle things if Daniel became a problem. The betrayal wasn't just silence, it was active complicity. Now, at dinner, Diana avoided my eyes. Her nervous laughter echoed in the formal dining room whenever Eliza spoke, the clicking of her gold bracelet a frantic counterpoint to the clink of silverware. She knew Marcus's fall wasn't random bad luck. She felt the shift in the air. My sister had chosen her side, definitively, again. Now she would learn what that choice cost. My nights became research sessions. Diana, in her quest for independent financial success, had taken risks. The Hayes textile investment was just one. Using my knowledge of her past dealings, information she'd unwittingly shared in my previous life, boasting about her savvy moves, and cross-referencing it with current market data, I started digging. It didn't take long to find the vulnerabilities. Questionable trades, leveraging inside information gleaned from her social connections, blurring the lines of legality. In her desperation to make the Hayes investment pay off and establish her own financial footing, she'd cut corners. Corners I now had a map to. During the day, I played the supportive brother, listened to her complaints about the market, offered vague encouragement about her investments. I even let her confide in me about her worries regarding the Hayes business, how Eliza marrying me was such a relief for the family's prospects. She trusted me, the brother she thought was still grieving his friend Marcus's misfortune, the brother blind to the vipers in his nest. As she revealed her anxieties, planning how my marriage would be her safety net, I was subtly gathering the final pieces needed to build a case against her. When she hugged me goodbye after one such a supportive chat, the subtle scent of her expensive perfume, usually crisp and professional, felt tainted. The SEC's anonymous tip line was about to receive an interesting call. The anonymous tip regarding Diana's trading activities was filed electronically, untraceable, just like the one concerning Marcus. It pointed regulators toward specific transactions, specific dates, specific connections. Enough smoke to guarantee they'd look for the fire? Almost simultaneously, I made my next move, a gesture of good faith towards my future family-in-law. I arranged a meeting with Eliza's father, expressing my concern over the financial pressures they were facing, especially now with the cloud hanging over Marcus, a key, albeit informal, business link for them. Then, I made an offer. A significant personal investment into the Hayes Textile Company. Enough to stabilize them, to give them breathing room, presented, of course, as a gesture of love for Eliza, a way to secure our shared future by supporting her family. Eliza was ecstatic, her father relieved. Diana, when she heard, was momentarily reassured, seeing it as proof that her plan was working, that my money would indeed shore up her own precarious position tied to the Hayes Company. We celebrated the investment agreement with champagne at Eliza's parents' house. The pop of the cork echoed loudly in the suddenly optimistic atmosphere. They toasted me, their savior, their generous future son-in-law. They had no idea the investment was merely bait, tightening the noose. The trap was set. All I needed was for Diana to step into it, relying on a lifeline that was about to be severed by the consequences of her own actions. The SEC investigation, sparked by the anonymous tip, moved with surprising speed. Unlike Marcus's situation, which involved complex corporate structures, Diana's questionable trades were more straightforward, easier to trace once someone knew where to look. The news broke not through whispers, but through official channels. Insider trading, financial impropriety. The fallout was immediate and brutal. Her reputation within the financial community, which she had painstakingly built, shattered overnight. Our parents were horrified, confused. How could their meticulous, successful daughter be involved in something like this? The family name was dragged into the headlines. More importantly for Diana, her access to credit dried up, her other investments tanked under the scrutiny, and the Hayes Textile Company, now revealed to be even more unstable than previously thought due to its reliance on Diana's shaky finances, became utterly dependent on my recent investment. My money was the only thing keeping it afloat. Diana crumbled. I saw her at a family crisis meeting, pale, trembling, incoherent. She sobbed, she denied, she blamed phantom enemies and bad advice. She begged our father for help, for lawyers, for a bailout. The confident, pragmatic sister was gone, replaced by a terrified, broken woman. Eliza watched her, not with sympathy, but with cold, calculating fear for her own family's now precarious position. Blood might be thicker than water, but the truth, delivered with precision, was acid to both. Diana came to me, of course, not just for family support, but for concrete help. Financial aid to cover legal fees, contacts who could potentially smooth things over with the regulators, intervention with the board of the Hayes Company, where my investment now gave me significant influence. I listened patiently, expressed deep disappointment and brotherly concern. I offered help, but only the kind that sounded good but did nothing. Minimal financial assistance, carefully structured as a loan with strict terms she couldn't realistically meet. Introductions to lawyers who were competent, but not miracle workers. Refusal to interfere directly with the Hayes board. It wouldn't be appropriate, Diana. Conflict of interest. She left my office looking even more defeated, the last flicker of hope extinguished. She knew, instinctively, that I wasn't helping her. The realization, dawning slowly, was perhaps more painful than the public disgrace. The paranoia among the remaining players intensified. Eliza became jumpier, more watchful. Richard Carmichael started making subtle inquiries about Marcus and Diana, trying to gauge my reactions, my knowledge. They could feel the ground shifting beneath them, but they still couldn't see the architect. I poured myself a glass of expensive dessert wine that night, swirling the golden liquid. The taste was sweet on my tongue, sweet like victory. 2 down, with the most important pieces. Richard and Eliza still on the board. And the game was far from over. With Marcus sidelined and Diana disgraced, Richard Carmichael clearly felt the pressure mounting, though he couldn't pinpoint the source. His aggression towards me at work escalated, shifting from subtle undermining to overt sabotage. The flagship project I was leading, the one tied to my promotion, suddenly faced inexplicable roadblocks. Funding channels mysteriously tightened, key team members were reassigned, crucial data was misplaced. Richard held meetings where he publicly questioned my strategy, my decision-making, casting doubt on my capabilities in front of senior management. I played my part, appeared stressed, concerned, working late hours trying to salvage the project. I let him see me hunched over my desk, the fluorescent lights of the mostly empty office flickering overhead, casting long, distorted shadows. I voiced my frustrations in carefully chosen ways, expressing confusion about the sudden obstacles, seeking his guidance as my mentor. I let him believe he was winning, that his plan to engineer my failure was succeeding, that I was the same ambitious but ultimately naive executive he'd manipulated in my first life. What Richard didn't know was that every obstacle he threw in my path was anticipated, every move he made documented. I hadn't just been working late on his doomed project, I'd been finalizing my own. I'd been planning this chess move for months. Checkmate was coming. Since my return, my birth, I hadn't just focused on Eliza's betrayal. I remembered Richard's corporate maneuvering, the skeletons in his executive closet that I'd only glimpsed the first time around. This life, I'd been meticulous, quietly gathering proof of his misdeeds, expense account abuses, conflicts of interest involving his pet projects, deals that benefited his cronies more than the company, even hints of communication suggesting he'd deliberately suppressed information detrimental to competitors his friends were invested in. It wasn't just about the setup against me. It was a pattern of behavior that prioritized his own gain over the company's health. Simultaneously, I'd cultivated relationships, not just downward with my team, but upward and outward. Quiet coffees with board members I knew were dissatisfied with Richard's leadership style or the company's stagnant growth under his tenure. Sharing insights, demonstrating strategic thinking, subtly positioning myself as a competent, ethical alternative. I compiled everything: emails, financial records, witness accounts implied but not yet revealed, into a comprehensive dossier. Secured. Prepared. Ready. The weight of the slim, leather-bound evidence folder in my briefcase this morning felt substantial, reassuring. The board meeting tomorrow, called ostensibly to discuss my failing project, would be one for the company history books. The atmosphere in the boardroom was tense. Richard sat at the head of the table, radiating smug confidence, ready to deliver the killing blow to my career. He opened the meeting, detailing the unfortunate setbacks under my leadership, his tone dripping with false regret. He recommended my removal from the project, hinting at a more permanent reassignment to a less critical role. Then it was my turn to speak. I stood up, calm, collected. "Thank you, Richard," I began, my voice even. "I appreciate your assessment. However, the challenges faced by the project were not entirely organic." I paused, letting the implication hang in the air. Then I addressed the board directly. "Before we discuss my future, I believe there are more pressing matters concerning the company's leadership and ethical governance that require the board's immediate attention." I didn't raise my voice. I simply laid out the facts, presenting the documented evidence from the folder. Richard's face went from smug to confused, then to pale shock as I detailed his misconduct, connecting the dots, revealing the network of favors and conflicts of interest. I showed how his actions, including the sabotage of my project, fit a larger pattern detrimental to shareholder value. Several board members, the ones I'd cultivated, nodded grimly, already aware of the broad strokes. Others looked stunned, then angry. Richard tried to interject, blustering, denying, but the evidence was too clear, too damning. By the end of my presentation, the tables hadn't just turned. They'd been completely overturned. The discussion shifted from my project to Richard's immediate future. His cologne, usually projecting power, suddenly seemed to smell of desperation and sweat. Before the meeting concluded, the board asked Richard to step out. Then they offered me an interim role, overseeing his responsibilities pending a formal leadership change. The corner office would have a new occupant by Monday. News of Richard's suspension, pending termination, hit the corporate world like a shockwave, and it sent Eliza into a tailspin. Her connection to Richard, primarily through his daughter Chloe, was a key part of her social strategy. Chloe was her entry point into certain circles, a validation of her rising status. With Richard disgraced, Chloe's social standing plummeted, and by extension, So did Eliza's access. The carefully constructed facade was cracking. Richard, utterly blindsided, tried desperately to figure out how I'd done it. How had the subordinate he was about to crush suddenly orchestrated his downfall? He called me, alternating between threats and pleas. He accused me of conspiracy, demanded to know who helped me, offered me deals to help him salvage the situation. He threatened to expose… what? My competence? My ability to uncover his corruption? He collapsed, metaphorically speaking, his power evaporating overnight. Listening to his frantic, impotent rage was confirmation that this cycle was complete. With the king removed from the board, the queen was now exposed, vulnerable. And the final act was about to begin. Despite everything, Marcus's ruin, Diana's disgrace, Richard's spectacular fall from grace, I maintained the engagement. I played the supportive fiancé to Eliza, listening to her anxieties about her family business, now increasingly under my influence, comforting her over the shocking news about Richard, assuring her that we were solid. Her fear was palpable now. She knew something was fundamentally wrong. The world she was trying to infiltrate was crumbling around her, and I, her intended target, was somehow emerging stronger from the chaos. She couldn't possibly connect me to all of it. The thought was too outlandish, too impossible. Yet, the timing, my unnatural calm, my rising fortunes, suspicion gnawed at her. But she couldn't break things off. Not now. Her family needed my investment. Her social standing, precarious as it was, still depended on the upcoming Sterling marriage. She was trapped. So, I pushed forward with the wedding plans, and I insisted on an elaborate, over-the-top engagement party. Bigger than the last one, more exclusive. A final celebration before the main event. To show everyone we're stronger than ever, I told her, squeezing her hand. She forced a smile, but her eyes were wide with something close to terror. The diamond ring I'd given her, the one she still wore, felt heavy in my pocket whenever I checked it was there. It felt heavier than before, charged with the weight of impending revelation. The engagement party would be memorable, just not in the way Eliza imagined. The grand ballroom of the Sinclair Hotel. Crystal chandeliers dripped light onto hundreds of guests, a glittering sea of the city's elite. Champagne flowed like water, the bubbles rising in delicate crystal flutes like tiny time bombs. The air hummed with expensive perfume, muted conversations, and the smooth sounds of a live jazz quartet. Everything was perfect, lavish, ostentatious even, exactly as I'd planned. Eliza stood beside me, stunning in emerald silk, playing the radiant fiancé. But her hand trembled slightly in mine. Her smile was brittle, stretched thin over visible tension. She kept scanning the room, her gaze darting towards the entrance. Marcus wasn't here, obviously. Diana was, hovering near our parents, looking pale and drawn, the clicking of her bracelet barely audible over the din. Richard Carmichael was conspicuously absent, his social exile complete. The remaining members of the Complicit social circle watched us, their curiosity tinged with a new unease. They sensed the power shift, even if they didn't understand it. My own calm, my easy smiles and confident greetings, seemed to unsettle everyone who knew or suspected the turmoil of the past few months. They expected stress, anger, vulnerability. They saw none of it. The clock on the ornate mantelpiece chimed softly. 7 o'clock. The exact time when in my previous life, during that other engagement party, Eliza had chosen to publicly humiliate me, cementing her betrayal. This time the chime signaled the beginning of my final act. I tapped my glass for attention, the clear chime cutting through the ballroom buzz. A hush fell. All eyes turned to us. "Thank you all for coming," I began, my voice carrying easily in the sudden quiet. Eliza and I are so thrilled to celebrate our engagement with all of you, our dearest friends and family." I smiled at Eliza, a smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. "It's been an eventful few months." A ripple of murmurs went through the crowd. Challenges arose, unforeseen difficulties tested relationships. My gaze swept briefly over Diana, who froze, her wine glass halfway to her lips. I saw Marcus's disgraced former colleagues shifting uncomfortably. But through it all, Eliza and I have remained strong. I paused, letting the lie hang there. "And tonight," I continued, raising my voice slightly, "I have a surprise. Someone very important to me. Someone instrumental in securing not just my future, but the future of businesses many of you are connected to, has flown in to celebrate with us. Please welcome Mr. Alistair Finch." The name meant nothing to most, but as the tall, silver-haired man with piercing blue eyes emerged from a side entrance, walking towards us with an air of quiet authority, I saw the blood drain from Eliza's face. She paled visibly. Diana gasped, a small, choked sound. Near the back, I saw Marcus's replacement from his firm fidget, recognizing the name whispered in powerful financial circles. The silence in the room became deafening as the investor, this unexpected guest, approached the space cleared for him beside me. Recognition dawned in their eyes, one by one, as I turned and clasped the man's hand. "Or perhaps," I said, my voice ringing with newfound power, "you know him better by the name our family uses, Grandfather." The collective intake of breath was almost comical. Alistair Finch, the notoriously reclusive, almost mythical billionaire industrialist, whispered about in boardrooms but rarely seen, was Andrew Sterling's grandfather? The Sterling family was wealthy, yes, old money, respectable. But this was a different stratosphere entirely. "My maternal grandfather," I clarified, smiling warmly at Alistair, a genuine smile this time. "We were estranged for many years, a family misunderstanding." That was the polite version. The truth was, my mother had cut ties before I was born, wanting a life away from his influence and control. In my first life, I barely knew he existed, a distant, formidable figure I never dreamed of approaching. But waking up in this second chance, armed with the knowledge of my impending doom and the betrayals surrounding me, I'd felt a desperate need for leverage, for power beyond my own corporate standing. I remembered fragments my mother let slip about her father's ruthless business acumen, his vast resources. It was a long shot, but I reached out. Explained my situation, not the rebirth, of course, but the corporate and personal betrayals I saw unfolding. Perhaps seeing a reflection of his own steel in my predicament, perhaps intrigued by the grandson he never knew, Alistair had listened. We reconciled, cautiously at first, then with growing mutual respect. He saw the potential Eliza and the others were trying to exploit, and he offered his backing, his resources, his name, kept discreetly in the background until now. Eliza stared, her mouth slightly open. Diana looked like she might faint. The fortune they thought they were chasing by clinging to me, the comfortable upper-class wealth they planned to manipulate and control, was a mere puddle compared to the ocean of power represented by the man standing beside me. An ocean I now had access to. An ocean I controlled. Alistair stepped forward, his voice calm but resonant, commanding immediate attention. "Andrew asked me here tonight not just to celebrate his engagement," he said, his sharp eyes scanning the room, lingering for a moment on Eliza's pale face and Diana's stricken one, but also to share some business news that affects several people in this room. He didn't need notes. As of this afternoon, Finch Industries, through a newly formed subsidiary headed by my grandson Andrew Sterling, has completed the acquisition of Hayes Textiles. A collective gasp went through the room. Eliza swayed, grabbing my arm for support, her fingers digging in like claws. Her family's company, their last hope, the business Diana had gambled on, was gone, swallowed whole. Furthermore, Alistair continued smoothly, Finch Industries has also taken a controlling interest in the financial firm where Andrew has demonstrated such resilience. He glanced towards where Richard Carmichael's allies stood clustered, their faces masks of shock. Effective immediately, Andrew will be assuming the permanent role of CEO, overseeing a complete restructuring. My promotion wasn't just interim, it was absolute. I now controlled not only Eliza's family business, but also the company that had employed, and then been betrayed by, both Marcus and Richard. My new position gave me direct control over the livelihoods and futures of nearly everyone who had conspired against me, including the remnants of their families and allies still clinging to the wreckage. Eliza's champagne glass slipped from her trembling fingers, shattering on the polished floor with a sound that seemed unnaturally loud in the stunned silence. The room spun with frantic whispers as the full, devastating truth settled in their minds. They hadn't targeted a moderately wealthy, naive fiancé. They had targeted the chosen heir of Alistair Finch. Later, amidst the stunned exodus of guests whispering frantically into their phones, I found Eliza alone in a small antechamber, staring blankly at a tapestry. The fight had gone out of her. Her shoulders slumped, the emerald silk seeming to swallow her diminished frame. "Andrew," she whispered as I approached, not turning around. "How?" "You didn't really think I didn't know, did you, Eliza?" I asked softly, stopping beside her. "About Daniel? About Marcus? Diana? Richard?" She flinched at each name. She turned slowly, her eyes searching mine, filled with disbelief, confusion, and a dawning horror. "But when? How could you know?" "Let's just say I got a second chance," I said, the words feeling strange but true. A chance to see things clearly, to remember lessons I didn't learn the first time. I didn't need to explain the metaphysics of it. The evidence of my knowledge, my power, was all around us. You planned all of this?" she breathed, gesturing vaguely towards the ballroom, towards the ruins of her ambitions. "Marcus? Diana? Richard? They made their own choices, Eliza, in this life and the last one." I reached into my pocket. Her eyes flickered down, perhaps expecting me to reiterate the proposal, a cruel twist of the knife. Instead, I pulled out the velvet ring box. Her breath hitched. I opened it, revealing the large diamond ring she'd worn with such pride. "I believe this belongs to you," I said calmly. "Or rather, it doesn't belong with me anymore." I didn't offer it to her. I simply held it out. Her perfume, the jasmine scent that once captivated me, now smelled artificial, cloying, the scent of rot beneath a beautiful veneer. Her hand trembled as she reached out, not to take the ring, but as if to ward me off. Disbelief warred with the horrifying truth in her eyes. I reached for the ring box in my pocket, but not to propose again. It was time to close this chapter, permanently. In the days following the engagement party disaster, they came to me, one by one, or sometimes in desperate, ill-advised pairs. Eliza, stripped of her leverage, her family's company now mine to command, tried tears, apologies, desperate explanations about Daniel being a mistake, a symptom of her insecurity. She swore she loved me, that we could still build a future. Marcus, facing legal ruin and professional oblivion, sent messages through intermediaries, offering undying loyalty, any information I wanted on others, anything for a lifeline. Diana, facing potential jail time and estranged from our parents, pleaded for family, for forgiveness, for me to use my newfound power to make it all go away. Even Richard Carmichael, a ghost of his former self, attempted a meeting, offering his experience to help me navigate the CEO role, promising support, essentially begging for scraps from the table he'd been thrown from. They begged. They promised. They swore loyalty they never possessed. I let them finish their performance before I spoke. My answer to each of them was the same. A simple, quiet, devastating no. No, Eliza, we can't rebuild. Trust, once shattered like that champagne glass, can't be pieced back together. No, Marcus, your loyalty isn't wanted now when it was absent then. Face the consequences of your actions. No, Diana, family means supporting each other, not enabling betrayal for financial gain. You made your choice. No, Richard, I don't need your kind of experience. The company needs ethical leadership, not manipulation. I didn't shout. I didn't gloat. I simply explained calmly that some bridges are burned too thoroughly to be rebuilt. Some actions sever ties permanently. My refusal, delivered without anger, without the heat of revenge, seemed to hit them harder than any punishment I could have devised. It was the finality, the quiet closing of a door they desperately needed to remain open. As I walked away from each encounter, particularly the one with Eliza, I felt a profound weight lifting from my shoulders. Freedom didn't taste like revenge. It tasted like possibility. 6 months later, the view from my new office, Richard's old office, extensively renovated, overlooked the sprawling city skyline. The smell of fresh paint still lingered faintly, a scent of new beginnings. Finch Industries' Sterling division, as my company was now known, was thriving under my leadership. We'd salvaged what was viable from Hayes Textiles, restructuring it ethically, saving some jobs, integrating it cleanly. The finance firm was undergoing a cultural overhaul, rooting out the last vestiges of Richard's cronyism. The villains? Their downfalls continued without any further intervention from me. Marcus took a plea deal, avoiding jail time but losing his license and reputation forever. Diana received a hefty fine and probation. Her relationship with our parents remained strained, her social standing gone. Richard retreated into obscurity, his name a cautionary tale in corporate circles. Eliza? I heard she moved abroad, trying to start over where the Sterling Finch name held less weight. Their fates unfolded as a consequence of their own choices, amplified by the power shift I'd engineered, but ultimately self-inflicted. I thought revenge would be the end of my story. I realize now it was only the prelude. It happened at a charity gala supporting arts education, an event I attended not for status, but because I genuinely believed in the cause. I wasn't looking for anyone, perfectly content with my new, uncluttered life. But then I started talking to her. Sarah, the director of the foundation. Sharp, funny, passionate about her work, completely unimpressed by my corporate title or family connections. Our conversation flowed easily, authentically. We talked about art, about the city, about terrible puns. She didn't try to gauge my net worth or social standing. She just talked to me, listened, and I laughed, genuinely laughed, a deep, easy sound I hadn't realized I'd been missing. I smiled freely, breathed easily, without the constant need for vigilance, for calculation. The contrast with every interaction I'd had with Eliza was stark, blindingly clear. This felt real. For the first time in 2 lifetimes, I felt something real beginning. 1 year later, the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in fiery shades of orange and purple, reflected in the calm ocean waters. I sat on the warm sand of a quiet coastal retreat, miles away from the city, the corporate battles, the ghosts of the past. Sarah sat beside me, reading, her presence a quiet comfort. We weren't defined by status or wealth. Our connection was built on shared values, mutual respect, and that easy laughter I first heard at the gala. The past year had been about building the company ethically, rebuilding my sense of self, and carefully, cautiously, building this new relationship. The ocean breeze felt clean, washing away the lingering scent of stale perfume and old betrayals. Distant laughter drifted on the air from other vacationers down the beach. I dug my toes into the cooling sand, feeling grounded, present. The desire for revenge had been an all-consuming fire, but it had burned itself out, leaving behind not ashes, but cleared ground, space for something new to grow. Some say living well is the best revenge. They're wrong. Living authentically is. And for the first time, across 2 lives, I finally understood what that meant.